Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. So in this video we are going to be reviewing the recently released Netflix movie Fatal Affair. Now Fatal Affair tells the typical story of how a moment of weakness from the lead character comes back to haunt them in a terrifying way. Now whilst this movie does have some decent moments in there, overall unfortunately it just feels really empty as a result, and it follows a super predictable formula. And while some of the characters and some of the visuals are decent, overall it just lacks a lot of suspense and a lot of jump scare moments, so it's pretty disappointing overall, and I'm going to break down everything that I think about this movie in this video review. So in terms of the plot of this movie, we're introduced to the lead character Ellie, who is a very successful lawyer with a 20-year marriage and a child, and she's looking to work on her final case in the big city before her and her husband move to have a more quiet life in the beach and where she can have her own practice. Now on her final case in the big city, she bumps into her old college friend David, who is an IT expert, and the two of them work really well together to solve this final case and to kind of end Ellie's career on a high within the city before she kind of does her own thing in the beach little area of San Francisco. Now whilst this is going on, Ellie is having a few marriage problems at home as her husband has just recently been in a car crash, and she's kind of been questioning all of the decisions that she's been making in her life and kind of feels bored and complacent in her 20-year marriage. At the same time, she's kind of seeing a very exciting, very successful character and David kind of coming back from her past, and kind of almost one thing leads to another and the two of them almost have sex, but Ellie kind of pulls away and tries to go back to her life. But then David doesn't take this too well and then suddenly becomes a full-blown psycho/stalker and begins terrorizing Ellie's life. So as you can see, the basic premise of the movie is pretty decent. Unfortunately, the execution of it just didn't really match up at all. So from a characters and actors point of view, I really do applaud the producers and directors of this film for really pushing the diversity angle of the movie. So that part was really cool. But in terms of the actual performances, some were decent and some were really average. So let's go through the main three characters in this movie. So the lead character is played by Nia Long, who plays Ellie, and she's a really decent character. You can really sympathize and relate to the situations that she finds herself in, and the actress really exhibits her big range of acting abilities in terms of showing fear, anger, panic, regret, etc. So that was really cool. In terms of the villain of the movie, that is played by Omar Epps, and he plays David, and he is a bit of a cartoony villain, if I'm being honest with you. So whilst he does do a lot of terrifying things, and I'll explain what all of that is in the ending explain section later on in this video, but it's just really disappointing in terms of his performance, because you don't really feel the suspense of things because it's just cut way too short, and you don't really see or feel the jeopardy of the situations as they're either way too short, they're either shown off screen, or it just doesn't have enough tense moments in there. So whilst this villain can cause a lot of terrifying situations, you just don't really feel it and you don't really see it in this movie, which is really disappointing. Next up we have Stephen Bishop, who plays Marcus, who is the husband to Ellie, and by contrast, his acting range is not very great in this movie, as when certain revelations are made towards the end of this movie towards this character, he just has very little to no emotional reaction, which is just really disappointing. And this character could have had some really interesting moments. There is actually a really big revelation in terms of this character specifically towards the middle/end of this film that could have actually been a really interesting storyline path if they pursued it, but they just didn't. And so overall, this character just felt really weak. And I know he was a supporting character, but he just didn't really make that much of an impact in this movie. So from a characters and acting point of view, it really should have been a lot better than it was. In terms of the visuals of this movie, it is super mixed because the set pieces of this film actually look really good. It is a modern day movie, so that all of the scenes in the big city look really cool. All of the quiet scenes in the beach look really cool, and the contrast between these two worlds is really nicely shown in the movie. So from an aesthetic point of view, the movie looks really cool. However, from a psychological thriller point of view, the visuals are pretty weak. You don't really feel the jeopardy or the suspense for these characters, as they are in terrifying situations and you do want to feel terrified for them. But some of the great moments that this movie could have shown are either not shown in this movie, they're either cut extremely short, or they're just not gripping enough. So, you know, from a visuals point of view, it is pretty disappointing because you do want to feel the jeopardy of the situations that these characters are in, but it's just not executed in a really great way. And you know, the musical score does add a bit of necessary intensity to the movie, however, it's not enough to make up for the bad execution in terms of the visual style for this movie. In terms of comparisons, you know, there are a lot of similar movies out there, such as Fatal Attraction, such as Obsession, such as Single White Female, such as The Roommate, such as Secret Obsession, etc. But the most similar in terms of the actual formula that the two movies follow, I would say, is The Boy Next Door. And whilst that movie wasn't perfect either, at least it had a lot more suspense in there and extended the intensity of certain situations in the movie and had a massive crescendo in the final act of the movie. But unfortunately, with The Fatal Affair, I just feel like it was just playing it way too safe, as it really could have been and really should have been a much better film. In terms of the ending of this movie, surprise surprise, it's revealed that David is the character behind all of the deaths in this movie, including the ones that we see in the opening act, which later you find out was his ex-wife Deborah and her new boyfriend. He also is the character that kills Ellie's daughter's boyfriend, he kills the policeman, he kills Ellie's secretary, and he's also the character behind the death of the homeless man where he faked his death as well. He also nearly killed Ellie's husband and Ellie's best friend as well. So, you know, you really do see that this character is a true psycho, but like I keep saying before, it's just a shame that you don't really feel the intensity or the jeopardy of the situations for these different characters, as the execution of this film is just really, really bad. But anyway, back to the ending. You also don't really know whether or not David's dead or not. So I like the fact that they've opened it out for a sequel, as the David character could come back if this movie is successful and continue terrorizing Ellie and her family. So, you know, potentially the door is open for a sequel. There was also that revelation that I mentioned earlier in terms of Marcus's character, that you almost find out that David was the character that nearly killed him in that car crash. But that was never expanded upon after that conversation in the golf course. Marcus didn't even work out that it was David that was the character that was behind all that. So I just feel like that was a bit of a wasted opportunity, as it could have been an interesting story angle as well, which they didn't really pursue. So, you know, in terms of the ending of this movie, it's all revealed to be David that was behind all of the terrorizing situations. But overall, like I keep saying, was just a little bit of a disappointing execution in this movie. Overall, Fatal Affair is a watchable movie. Within the psychological thriller genre, it's a lot more light-hearted, a lot more easy watching. But if you're after a really gripping, a lot more intense psychological thriller film, then there are a lot of better alternatives out there. You know, some of the performances were okay, some of the visuals are alright, some of the set pieces are actually really, really nice. But I just feel like overall, the execution was really, really weak, and the performance of the lead villain was really, really lacking, and overall the movie really could have been and should have been so much better. So for all of those reasons, I have to give Fatal Affair a 3 out of 10. I'd love to hear what you think, so please let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.